It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day here in Arkansas. It's a beautiful day in Arkansas and a great fall day. We're going to get right into it because we're on kind of limited time today because the guests are in the house, and then we have two that are calling in. The first part of the show, what we're going to do is I've got Senator Blake Johnson in-house, and we have Lorrie Trogden, who is the president and CEO of the Bankers Association here in Arkansas, and we're going to talk about Joe Biden's overreaching efforts to try to, say when you taking money out of your bank, when they can track you or not. And I'll let them get into the details of that in a minute. And then also we have Senator Dan Sullivan in, and we're going to talk along with Greg Payne, who is an attorney that won a lawsuit this past week, along with some other things regarding the lawsuit that he won against the school up there in northwest Arkansas, right? So anyway, we'll get into the details of it in a minute. It'll play out as we go. First of all, Senator Johnson, this is the first time you've been in studio, I think, at least with me. So is that right?
Yes, sir.
I got a bad memory, or am I right?
No, you're right.
Right. All right. Well, tell folks where you're from, what area you represent, because I think it's so important for people to know where folks are representing. So go ahead.
District 20 is in the northeast corner of Arkansas. It's Clay, Greene, Lawrence, and part of Randolph and part of Craighead County.
Very good. And you got one brand new constituent in your district this week, didn't you? Or you got you got a new constituent in your house.
Well, yeah, my son had the first baby, first grandbaby, so Ellie Rose was born yesterday afternoon.
That is so cool. So cool. First grandbaby for you?
Yes.
Very good. Going to have her out on the combine?
Eventually.
Eventually. Tell them what you do for a living, because I think that's important, too, for people to know what their senators and representatives do.
I farm row crop. I'm rice, corn, soybeans, and done that for over 25 years.
Very good. That's why you look so young and beefed up and everything, right?
Beefed up. Okay.
Beefed up, okay. Dan, you've been on the show before. Tell them where you're from, though.
Yes, Senator Dan Sullivan from Jonesboro.
You guys got the northeast part of the state covered, don't you?
We do, yes.
Yeah, great. All right, and we have the most important person on the show for this portion is Lorrie Trogden, President, CEO, Bankers Association. Lorrie, thank you for joining us here on the Kim Hammer Show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get into it. Senator Johnson, you introduced a Senate resolution, and just for those of you that don't know, this is like making as strong of a statement as we can make, and this was specific to the Senate because we agreed at the beginning of this coming out of recess session that we would not do any concurrent resolutions just for the sake of time, and so this is a standalone Senate resolution. Tell folks what SR, Senate Resolution 33, does and what it's all about and why Lorrie is involved in the discussion.
It is a mirror to the House resolution, and it protects consumer privacy in the banking industry. And they're in Washington. They're trying to push through in the reconciliation a banking rule that if you move $600 in or out of your account, that they can transmit data, your checking and data into the IRS. So that data has a possibility of being breached, and it keeps unbanked people from wanting to be banked, and banked people not to be banked. So appreciate Lorrie's efforts on that, and you can provide more details, Lorrie.
Hey, Lorrie, as you explain it, talk about the 600, because you made a comment in committee about that 600 as often as it is tracked or when it is. Talk about the 600 and go ahead and expand on Blake's thought, would you please?
Sure. So the $600 is not a one-time transaction. What happens is that over the course of 12 months, the bank has to monitor inflows and outflows to your account. And if those equal $600, that triggers the reporting. So that basically equates to if you spend $25 a month, then your data will have to be sent to the IRS. So that basically pretty much encapsulates every American.
Why would they want to do that?
Well, they claim that it is to close the tax gap and catch tax evaders that are the top 1% wealthy in America. And so why a $600 limit that or the $600 threshold that they chose, I really don't know, because that captures everybody, not just the top 1%.
And the current amount is how much?
Well, this data is not being sent right now. So there really is no current amount. A lot of people talk about the $10,000 amount because they're used to hearing about that, but $10,000 is a one-time transaction, so that it's completely separate from this. That would still be in place. If you put money in or take money out of the bank that's $10,000 or more, they have to turn in a report about that transaction. But this is just brand new, never been done.
Is there any rationale to the 600? Is there a reasonable number out there that would be reasonable, or is this just total intrusion by the Biden administration and by Washington into the personal affairs?
We don't feel like there is a reasonable number, and here's why. Regardless of where you set that number, you are overreaching customer privacy. So this data, you have a right to keep this extra data private as a U.S. citizen. As you know, privacy is very important to us. And you mentioned, or Blake mentioned, the underbanked and unbanked. Their number one reason for not opening bank accounts is because of customer privacy. They don't want the IRS having data it doesn't need. And make no doubt about it, the IRS does not need this data. They can capture tax evasion with the data they currently have if they would just use it. The second thing would be data security. The IRS experiences 1.4 billion cyber attacks a year, and they have actually had a data breach. And so all of that new data they are collecting is put at risk to hackers, basically, to be able to access it. And then, of course, it's also going to cost taxpayers more, because when you go to get your taxes prepared, there's going to be a lot more to reconcile and a lot more paperwork for the person doing your taxes. And so it's actually going to cost you more to have that done. And that's really going to hit small business pretty hard, and consumers as well. But, so this really encompasses, it's just an overreach across all parts. And all that will happen no matter what they set the threshold at. So not to mention the infrastructure build out. So the IRS has to have the infrastructure to take the data in, and the bank has to build the infrastructure to send the data out. And so this isn't just, your checking account. It's your checking account. It's your savings account. If you have a loan with the bank, it's any kind of account that you have. They have to build processes or infrastructure to get that data out. So no matter what the threshold is, all of those same things still apply. So in our opinion, it doesn't matter what the threshold is, it's still a bad idea.
So let me, and Lorrie, I'm going to open it up to the two senators, because I have Senator Dan Sullivan here also with me for the second part of the segment. But let me ask you this, and weigh in, Lorrie, by all means. Absent of a reasonable cause for why you should do something, which based on the explanation, and quite honestly, I don't trust the Biden administration. I don't trust the IRS. Absent of a reasonable cause for a reason to do something, what would be the reason for doing this?
My opinion is they want to see if your checking and banking matches your income on what you send in. And whenever you set it at that low, any threshold, especially that low, you're going to be able to cross-reference all of them.
Dan?
Yes, and again, we've kind of lost the consent of the governed. We are now in an administrative state. We govern by executive order. That's what's happening here. And, the people are losing a lot of our freedoms as the government intrudes more and more on our life. And this is just another example of that, and we'll talk about some others later. But this is a huge intrusion on privacy.
Lorrie, you got anything to share?
I would agree with both of those thoughts. As Americans, our privacy is very important to us. And, Biden himself is actually pushing this specific proposal. There's a list of things that they are trying to get into the reconciliation bill, and this is one of them. And this is one in particular, for whatever reason, that he has singled out that he himself is pushing.
So let me ask you, the appointment that he wants to put in charge of the banks. When you look at her history coming from Russia and, just the concept of even putting somebody like that out there, I don't have anything against anybody from Russia as long as you don't try to bring Russia to us, okay? Because if it was so successful, they'd be successful. That's Kim Hammer's personal opinion. But when you tag that into something like what he's trying to do with this, how does the banking industry feel, at least as far as what you're comfortable speaking to, how does the banking industry feel as a whole about what he's trying to do? Because one of the things that brought this up above the bubble is one of the bankers pushed out a letter, I think, to all the customers, and obviously it became public that they would not participate in this. They feel it's everything that you're expressing. But when you take Biden's proposed opponent, the lady that he wants to put over banking, couple it with this, what's the comfort or lack of comfort level in the banking industry?
Yes, you're talking about the head of the OCC, which she would be the comptroller of the currency. And we feel, that this is not the right person to put into this position. She has openly stated that she wants to end the banking system as we know it. She wants to make the Federal Reserve basically the bank, and all banks would do would be take the money in and send it to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would make all the decisions. It would become a government bank that's controlled by the government. It would destroy our entire banking system.
Which subsequently would lead to what other things?
They could do anything they wanted. With all of your account information, they would have free reign to do anything they wanted. Exactly.
And I think that's I'm a firm believer that is exactly what the Biden administration, the Democrats, want to do. Because if they can get hold of the money and they can get hold of what you're doing with your money, what else is there that you can't do that they don't know about? Because the money is the evidence, kind of like somebody said, show me your checkbook and I'll show you what's important in your life. If they're able to see all the transactions that are occurring. But let me ask you this. What else could they be doing that would be a better approach to the reason why they say they're doing what they're doing with this? I mean, if they want to go after the 1%, or like Blake said, they want to be able to track it, what are some other reasonable solutions that if they really wanted to address the problem without being overly aggressive like they are, what else could they be doing?
What they really need to do, they have publicly stated that they can't use the data that the banks are giving them right now because they don't have enough technology and they don't have enough people. And let me just tell you as an aside, the banking or the Bankers Association itself has to turn in tax forms, and our taxes from 2018 are just now being processed.
I just wonder what Thomas Jefferson would think about this, because he had a distrust of centralized banking, and at least these are private institutions, even though they're with the Federal Reserve, but these are private institutions, and this is gonna consolidate your data into government. So that's way beyond what Thomas Jefferson ever anticipated and didn't trust in a centralized system. So I think he would roll over.
Lorrie?
If they would just put a little bit of money into technology and resources, with the current data that they have right now, they could do exactly what they're trying to do, which is to find tax evaders, which is what they state they're trying to do, at least.
Of which we don't believe. But that's my opinion, and maybe everybody can say, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So let me ask you, Lorrie, what can we do? What can be done? This is being done through reconciliation, which it probably caused everybody to throw up in the room if they knew what they're trying to do through reconciliation. But what can you do? Blake has introduced this resolution, which is, I don't know that there was any opposition to this. I don't remember any opposition to this.
I don't remember any either.
And this is one of those things, I don't care what party you are, Democrat, Republican, Green, Independent, Purple, or whatever, they're wanting to get in your business. So I think that's probably why they got a unanimous support for it.
Everybody wants privacy, especially in the finances and in their banking business. So,
well, once your privacy of your finances are gone, what else is left?
Well, they're going to count your bullets, I guess.
Yeah. So Lorrie, what can be done? Give it to me from what can be done through the federal delegation, what can be done through the state delegation, what can be done through the banking association. and what can be done by the private citizen that would help stop the insanity?
So the private citizen, look, we are very lucky in Arkansas. Our federal delegation, our congressmen, our senators have all come out against this. They are writing op-eds. They are sending letters to congressional leadership. And that's really what we need from the private citizens as well, because what they need to understand in Washington is that, we see what you're doing, and we want you to know we are opposing this, and there will be repercussions at the ballot box for this. And so what the private citizen can do is talk to congressional leadership. So the Nancy Pelosi's and the head of the Rules Committee, which this will probably go to next, the head of the IRS, register your opposition. If you go to arcbankers.org to our advocacy page, we actually have pre-populated letters. We have all the addresses that you need. So it's a one-stop shop right there. That's the most important thing. They need to hear from America that we're not going to sit down for this, and that they need to vote no on this.
I'd add that we need to know that our local bankers, our state bankers, are on the side of the people on this. So if people experience problems or they're concerned, they need to know that their bank is not supportive of what's going on. So let's not take anything out on our local banks. We're all on the same side, and let's work with our local banks to fight against this.
Lorrie, give that website, or is it arkbankers.org?
Yes, sir. .org, and then the advocacy tab. Dan, you're right on with that. We're all trying to stand strong together on this. We have voiced our opinion, obviously, over and over again, and are doing everything we can. You'll see yesterday, Friday, in the Democrat Gazette, I have an op-ed in there that talks about this, and it also gives that website link. So go and check that out. And you know what? Write your own op-eds. Get those into the paper. Get those. There's more than just the Democrat Gazette. Get them into the papers all across the state. So, we can all work together on this to try and stop it.
Where are the big businesses that it would appear are in bed with Biden? Where are they pushing back, or how are they pushing back on this? I mean, I can't imagine that they want them in their business, because when you talk about bank accounts, you're not just talking about personal bank accounts. You're talking about business bank accounts, right? All accounts. Is that right?
It is every account out there.
So Walmart, Tyson, J.B. Hunt, Stevens Inc., all the big boys, and worldwide. I mean, I'm just thinking of Arkansans, okay? But I mean, are they pushing back on this? Because it seems like there's a concerted effort between government and big business to be in bed together to push an agenda based on other things that we've dealt with. So is there a big pushback by the big businesses against the Biden administration? Hey, you got to stop this mess.
From what I've seen a lot of trade associations, which, from my perspective, that's mainly what I see. And there are trade associations across every industry are protesting this.
Okay, that's good to know, because if they weren't, and they weren't being very vocal, it wouldn't take away the perception that big business is in with the government. And this would be one thing they could do and I can't help but believe if they scream loud and they scream loud enough, somebody's going to wake up in the White House and realize we've messed up on this one. But we can't leave it up to them. We got to take it to the local level and sow some grass seed and let the grassroots take over. So
that'd be the first time that the federal government listened to the people in this administration.
Yeah, well, you can always hope. But all right, Lorrie, anything else you want to weigh in on this particular topic, or anything else you want to share?
I would just let everybody know now's the time. You can't wait on this. They need to hear your voice, and I just highly encourage everyone to do the things that we've just talked about and let your voice be heard.
All right. Hey, one other question, and these guys know when I'm in committee, unless I get cut off, I have one more question, okay? If you're going after the 1% that are violating it, and you offered up a very common sense approach and solution to it a while ago, if really, $600, I know people that don't have $600 to spend a week. Why don't you go after the ones that you think are doing it by if you were going to set a threshold higher and you really meant what you intended to do as far as what you intended to achieve, would you not have started maybe at 6,000 instead of 600 if you really
Well,
wanted to get to the problem?
right. Well, and you have to think about even 6,000 is maybe $500 a month. So even at 6,000,
Okay.
you're going to have to go extremely high because this is over a 12-month period. So if you're spending $600, if you're paying your rent every month and your utility bills, you're going to hit that threshold. So, like I said, we don't think that any threshold is okay because no matter who it captures, you're still putting that private data into the hands of the IRS. It's at risk for breach and hackers. And then the banks have to build that infrastructure out no matter who it's capturing. So, there may only be 10,000 bank customers that this captures, but they have to spend all of the money to build that infrastructure. And your small community banks that are in your community, they can't build that themselves. They have to rely on a third party. So they're somewhat at the mercy of a third party vendor to get that system built out and how much that vendor is going to charge to build that system. So it could really damage your small community banks.
And you prove my point. It doesn't matter what the dollar value. There is no good dollar value, which means there is no good reason, which this is Kim Hammer's opinion, which means it's part of a greater plan to try to bring this country down. So, all right. Lorrie, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving some time on Saturday here on the Kim Hammer Show. Been an excellent guest. And again, that website that you can go to, the advocacy tab, is ARK Bankers, ARK Bankers, spelled out, .org. And it's important that you send a letter and let your voice be known, because what you don't want to have happen is this happen, and then you look back and say, man, I wish I would have done something. This is your chance to do something. All right. We've had Lorrie Trogden on, and she is the president and CEO of the Bankers Association. Lorrie, thank you, and have a great Saturday afternoon. All right, we're going to transition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to transition here on the Kim Hammer Show to a different topic. We've got Greg Payne, who's coming on, and Dan, I'm going to let you introduce our guest, and then we got to take a break, and we'll come back up and pick it up and go.
Sure. Greg Payne is a wonderful attorney from Northwest Arkansas who actually represented a group of legislators when we filed suit against the governor's overreach, and he's working with some school districts and individuals about government overreach.
All right, very good. We come back after the break on the Kim Hammer Show. We'll bring Greg into the conversation and continue the subject. Hope you have a great day as you listen to this announcement, and then come back and join us. All right, welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. Our guest for this half hour is going to be Greg Payne. And as you heard Senator Sullivan introduce him a while ago, he's an attorney that represented some of us legislators in a lawsuit a year or so ago. I can't remember, lost track of time. After this week of the session, have you guys ever seen, how long you been down here, Dan?
This is my 7th year.
How long you been down here?
This is my 7th year. I've been in the Senate the entire time, and Dan transferred over
Into the House and now the Senate. Right.
Yep. And I've got 8 years in the House, my first term in the Senate. I will say that this past week has been about the most educational week as far as, seeing things and the maneuvering. And I did say, make sure, manipulation. I saw no manipulation. I just saw a lot of maneuvering, and it was a very educational week.
I think we need to go back in the rule book and say this was on Wednesday, this was on Thursday, put a date and see how many is left off. I think we went through just about everything in the rule book.
Yeah, we did. If you highlighted the rule book, there wouldn't be much left to highlight after we got done this week.
Well, I think we drew some lines in the sand over some of these votes. And I think the people in the public will be looking at these votes when election time comes up next year. And I think there'll be some again, clear lines on whether you support privacy and freedom or whether you're willing to allow an overreach in government work in this state.
All right, let's get Greg into the conversation, and we may let Greg go, and we'll just have a three-way legislative conversation here to wrap up the show. Greg, thank you for joining us here on the Kim Hammer Show today. Dan, let me ask you to say or tell what Greg did, and then, Greg, we're going to get you in the conversation. What is it that Greg did this past week, because you're knowledgeable?
Sure. Well, just recently, he's done a lot of things over time, but just recently he represented a group of parents who filed suit against the school district in Bentonville about the mask mandate. And Greg worked with them and took that to court, and a judge ruled in favor of the parents and in favor of Greg. So that was a huge win that should go throughout the state.
All right, Greg, let me ask you, because you got Senate Bill 1002, which, regardless of how anybody voted, I think you got to at least throw it in the conversation that Senator Gardner ran. It's gone through the court system. The judge ruled what he did. And then what you're doing up there, help bring the jello to a firmness, and help us understand how that, with what you've done and how it all comes together, that you were able to successfully win.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. Hey, Dan, always good talking to you. Actually, what we did, Act 1002 really didn't figure into our calculation, and one of my arguments in the case in Benton County was that, given that Judge Fox is a Pulaski County Circuit Court judge, and declaratory judgment statute is supposed to be limited to his jurisdiction, that Act 1002 was still active law elsewhere. She didn't buy that argument, but what the end result was, and I think is beneficial to everybody, is essentially saying that Act 1002 is unnecessary, because Act 1002 essentially banned mask mandates throughout the state. And I think what the practical effect of what Judge Duncan did day before yesterday was essentially say that mask mandates should be banned throughout the state, which is the way it should work. I mean, that's the law. I mean, we don't always need the legislature. I mean, we often need legislators to jump in, but not all the time. I mean, they have already reached that decision, because they have never granted any authority to the Department of Education or to individual school districts to issue these mask mandates. So you really shouldn't have to pass legislation that says you can't do it, because they can't do it. Dan and I probably had this conversation months and months ago, but they simply cannot do that. So I appreciate Trent's measures, but it's just unnecessary. But in this day and age, like Dan also said, we're fighting government overreach wherever we can find it. And this is perhaps one of the most egregious ones, given that the effect was a violation of what Judge Duncan has referred to now as parents' constitutional rights. And actually, the U.S. Supreme Court and Arkansas Supreme Court call them fundamental liberty interests. I mean, that's the inalienable stuff that Thomas Jefferson drafted into the Declaration of Independence. That is recognized.
Greg,
go ahead.
Let me just ask you a question just for clarity. So the governor has the authority to make the mandate under certain circumstances, but these other entities, public boards like school boards, most likely library boards or any other entity that's out there, only the governor has the authority to do that, not these independent boards. Is that essentially what the ruling was?
Well, sort of. Any rule, of course, has to go. Unless it's an existing rule, like we ran into last year with the 2019 rules of the Arkansas Department of Health. I mean, those statutes. And the Arkansas Department of Health is sort of a different animal, because they have their own statutory section as what their powers are. But even those statutes say if they're going to issue a rule, they've got to, even in an emergency situation, they've got to run that by the executive subcommittee of the Legislative Council for approval. And the reason the governor doesn't get involved is that with the amendments to the Emergency Services Act that you guys passed in, I think it was January, if the governor issues an executive order, short answer to your question is yes, theoretically, the governor could issue executive order mandating masks like he did last year. But now, under the new law, if he were to do that, you guys can call yourself into committee of the whole within 8 days. That's why he won't do that.
Exactly.
Cheers to you guys for putting those restrictions on his power. But unfortunately, he's chosen other avenues.
Yeah, the important thing is for people out there who are listening in their local school district, they can use this action by the judge as a template to go to their local school board and superintendent and say, you no longer have the authority, or you never had the authority to do this. Remove the mask mandate from our school today. Is that pretty close to correct?
That's pretty close. And what's good about that is that their instincts are correct, which is a good instinct for every citizen to have. Is that if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck or quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. Their instincts are that these rules violate their constitutional rights. That instinct is right on point, and that is the great starting point. That instinctive feeling that when government acts, there's a possibility you're violating my constitutional rights, and this is now the poster child for that philosophy. And we're getting calls from myriad other school districts saying, "Can you come down here and help us?" And of course we're available to do that, and you're going to see a lot of us around the state unless the Arkansas Department of Education changes their guidelines and informs their schools that we reviewed Judge Duncan's judgment and we simply don't have the power to do this.
Well, I actually called the Department of Education on Friday, and their formal statement was that the judge's action was a temporary restraining order, and they're waiting to change their, quote, guidance that is law. They're waiting on the judge to make that effective immediately. And I think you're getting ready to make that happen, aren't you?
We are getting ready to make that happen. But are you telling me the Department of Education has no attorneys on staff that can say, "Hey, you know what? They're right about that. That can't happen." That's a problem, and all this. And Dan, I think you share my frustration. I'm sure all you guys share my frustration. I'm just one lawyer in an office, and I can figure this out. And I have to have parents dig into their pockets and write me checks to pay me to go to court to do this stuff. Those guys are on salary paid by the state. Pick up a law book and get into West. You guys can figure this out. Read my briefs, read the judge's order. You guys, they know that they don't have the authority for this. That is the most egregious part of all of this. Amen. They know it.
You think we ought to put the attorneys that work for the state in the same position that you as an attorney work in private practice, and you be paid if you win, but if you don't, you lose?
I would be tickled to see you guys work on some legislation that says something along those lines.
I think all the state attorneys just suck the air out of the room if they're listening. But so let me ask you: there's an attorney general's opinion that has been requested. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but the attorney general's opinion is asking the attorney general to make a determination if guidelines that are being used by the Department of Health and by the Department of Ed, when it comes to what they are presenting to schools and telling schools that if you don't follow these guidelines, we're going to be able to take punitive action against you, such as superintendent. We're going to withdraw your teaching certificate. We're going to withdraw your accreditation. Those are things that have actually gone out to school districts where they have inquired about, are these guidelines that we can incorporate into our local policy, or do we have to follow these as the letter of the law? That attorney general's opinion was asked to be on an expedited basis, of which I was told it was. So hopefully it'll be out, pretty soon, because this is a issue that has long-term ramifications. What about the position that the Department of Health and Department of Ed take with regards to guidelines? Are they letter of the law? Because a lot of them have not been through the legislative process. They've not been through the rulemaking process. They've just been passed out as guidelines. Do you have an opinion about that with your experience on what you just went through, or do you care to even weigh in on that?
No. You asked me a question, I'll weigh in on it. The guidelines do not have force of law. Similarly, that's why these administrative agencies are careful to call them guidelines. They'll call them guidelines or recommendations. Same with the CDC, the guidelines. They're not law. Where the rubber hits the road is when the individual school districts and superintendents take those guidelines and formulate rules, like the mandatory mask mandates. They're not authorized to do that, and the judge was all over that on Wednesday. They're not authorized to do anything. Nothing they do or nothing they're following has force of law. They take it upon themselves to issue these rules that are inflicting these measures on parents and their children. So that's why, that's kind of the frustration, is that we now have to go to individual school districts and knock them off one by one until the Arkansas Department of Education reacts. And that's also the problem with, and I know there's a purpose behind sovereign immunity for executive agencies, but that's a roadblock I mean, I would love to, and you know, I know the courts don't want taxpayer dollars that go to Department of Education to be paid back to attorneys like me, and I get that, but they are violent. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, we're going to send you a guideline, wink, wink, you know, do this, and they do it. So we should. I mean, typically in the battles, you talk to any. I've never been in the military, but you talk to any military, you cut the head off the snake. You don't fight these individual battles. You go straight to the Department of Education or straight to the governor and have them make this right. That's one of the most frustrating things about it. That's why they call them. They insulate themselves by calling them guidances and not issuing rules. They go through the administrative procedure process.
Well, Greg, you know, this administration, the Hutchinson administration, is using the same strategy that the Biden administration is using. They put out guidance for the reason of fear, intimidation. We're even using incentives in the same way to achieve their goal without going through the legislative process. Biden is using that. Our governor is using that. And even though the Department of Education has seen this ruling in Bentonville, they're still hesitant to let the people have the rights to make those decisions, particularly on the mask and I think the quarantines.
All right, so let me just play this out for you for a minute. If that AG opinion came back and said, you know what, it's our opinion that the Department of Ed and Department of Health, through rendering opinions or through rendering guidelines to schools, have the full weight of law, then we would come in legislatively and change that in order to address that. Can you give any free legal counsel about that idea and about
don't you guys have legal counsel? Don't you guys? You got somebody on staff to answer these questions for you, don't you?
Yeah, but they're not on the radio today, and I need to know this before I get out of here. Okay? I mean, we got a special session. Come on, man. Let's go. So
that don't keep Kim from having questions.
No, AG's opinion. Again, that's kind of like a guideline from Arkansas Department of Health. It doesn't have any legal. I mean, it's persuasive, but that's not law either. But yeah, you guys. But then here's how the current administration works. They know you guys are part-time legislators. You're going to be in session 2 or 3 months every 2 years, right? So they just play cat and mouse with this stuff. Like I talked to some school board members from another school district this morning, and what the school board threatened to do was, well, you know, based on these figures that come out from ACHI, which is actually Jose Romero sits on the board of ACHI, so that's not an independent agency either. That's essentially a branch of the Arkansas Department of Health. But they say, well, if the numbers go below 30 per 10,000, we'll withdraw the mask mandate. But the next week they go up, we'll put it back in place. They think they're going to avoid lawsuit by pulling it, putting it back, and pulling it, putting it back. That doesn't slow us down at all. So that's the way administrative agencies work. I mean, and the governor works. He knows you guys are in session only periodically, so he'll take advantage of your downtime and just to, you know. And as we learned last year, they'll issue directives till the cows come home until you guys are back in session. And now he doesn't dare it because if he issues an executive order, you guys are immediately back in session. That was a great deterrent to governor's tyranny, except he turned to private corporations for the vaccine mandates and now to schools for the mask mandates. He's essentially doing indirectly what he doesn't dare do directly. It's the same violation, but he just won't step up and do it.
So let me ask this question. You got a judge in Little Rock that ruled one way. You got a judge up in Northwest Arkansas that ruled a different way on the same subject. Am I right on that?
Not right on that. That was totally different subject.
Totally different. Okay.
What Judge Fox did was rule on the constitutionality of Act 1002.
Gotcha.
Like I said, we don't need Act 1002. What Judge Duncan did was do a point-by-point evaluation of all existing Arkansas statutory law and any case law, and found that there's no law in Arkansas granting that you guys have, through the legislative process, have delegated to either Department of Health or the Department of Education or individual school districts to issue mask mandates. Totally different ballgame. We don't. Act 1002. They're going to have a hearing on that in November, I think. It doesn't matter. I mean, it would support our argument if the Supreme Court upholds the constitutionality of Act 1002 or a specific provision that applies to public schools. I mean, that would support our arguments, of course. But we don't need that. Judge Duncan has now found, regardless of the existence of Act 1002, there is no law that allows the school boards to issue mask mandates, and that's actually more than important than Act 1002.
So I guess
they're not contrary opinions at all.
I guess a person or a group of families could get together and sue individually each school board member, the superintendent, and all others who enforced an illegal act by the government. Is
Yes.
that true?
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, I may go beyond that, and I'm in the process of formulating a theory on this. Now that the Judge Duncan has given us our opinion that she believes that there is no statutory authority, any existing mask mandates, which the school boards evaluate periodically and renew periodically, those are now all illegal acts. And illegal acts may be an exception to the personal liability of individual school board members. My upcoming theory is that now they are all personally exposed to personal liability because they're acting illegally. So they need to be on guard that they're not going to have to each hire their own private attorneys to continue with these illegal mask mandates.
Okay, hey, I want to interject something here because I got friends that are on school board, and I got some really good
I
friends.
used to have friends that were on there. I don't know
Well,
if
you
there
need
still are.
you need to get back to my side. But anyway, they are.
There are a lot of friends. We had two friendly school board members on the Bentonville School District too. So I mean, we know that there are people out there who agree with us.
But here's what I see as the dilemma, because I've had school board members talk to me. I've had superintendents talk to me, as we all have. And here's part of the problem as I see it. So help me straighten it out. You got a Department of Ed that is threatening the schools that if you don't do this, then by golly, we're gonna punish you for this. You're telling me that they don't have the legal authority to do that, but you've got school board members and superintendents that are wanting to do it, but they are feeling that spirit of intimidation because when they call their legal counsel may not be giving them best advice, or who knows what goes on. And I mean, I don't want to be punishing school board members or superintendents who want out from it. In fact, there was a survey that was run by some legislator that showed there was insignificant difference overall between schools that had mask mandates versus controlling versus not. Was it highly scientific? No, but it was a good indicator. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the wash. I don't want to punish the folks that want to get out from underneath this, but they feel like they have no other option but to have to go along with it. What you're saying is they're subject to being sued in their personal capacity, and even though they want out of it. How do you resolve that, or what do we need to do to give them coverage, and how do we fix this, in your opinion?
Well, I don't want to sue parents. I mean, by and large, those people are parents, and they're well-meaning, but they got to start asking the tough questions. And just so you know, I mean, there are certain law firms, most of them in Little Rock, that represent a vast majority of the school districts. The attorney went up the Friday firm, which we argued against in Bentonville. They are now on notice. They should be out. I mean, they were. I'm not sure they took us too seriously before the Bentonville School District case. They now have to advise their clients, meaning the individual school boards, that they face. I mean, they're going to lose. They could lose this thing, and then likely will, depending on the judge. So they have to change. They have to change their tune now when the school boards are seeking their advice as to how we handle this stuff and do we face liability. Well, in the Bentonville School District case, we not only sought declaratory judgment and injunctive relief, we are seeking, fundamental basis of the violation of the Arkansas Civil Rights Act is a violation of constitutional rights, and we have that now. We've asked for monetary damages in the Bentonville case. School boards need to be on notice. We're not playing around anymore. I mean, in
Greg,
County,
let me jump into this real quick because I got a quick opinion on this. The legislature has consistently stood up and challenged the law. That's what we do, and we've gone to the federal Supreme Court multiple times in important issues. It's time we have some of these school boards step up and say, Department of Education, we are not going to enforce this law. We think it's illegal. We think it's a violation of the rights of the people that elected us and the students that are being harmed. In Department of Education, we are not going to enforce your law. Take your best shot at us because we have the people and we have the law on our side.
But who's going to represent them when that happens?
Well, he's on the radio now.
Okay.
We've got there
actually,
are a number of people
it goes beyond that.
Yeah, there are people that are going to
Dan.
watch that, and there are law firms that are going to do that. And we need our school boards to remember, just like we talked about in legislative session yesterday, we represent the people. The school boards represent the people, and the people are speaking loudly on this.
Yeah, it goes beyond that, Dan, because I learned in the school board's response to my initial petition, they alleged in there, I didn't catch this till the last minute, they alleged that not only is their ARP-ESSER money a factor, but that the Federal Department of Education has threatened civil lawsuits against the states or individual school boards if they didn't mandate masks. I actually proposed a resolution prior to going to the hearing that, that gives us a common enemy between, school, because here's the unfortunate fallout about this is now school board members or school boards and parents are now in an adversarial relationship when it should be a wholly cooperative relationship in the interest of educating our children, which is the constitutional function of the Arkansas Department of Education, right? But now it's wholly adversarial, and I mean it's pretty it's getting ugly in some of these school board meetings.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
Which is part, I think, of the Biden and the Democrat agenda is to create that division to where people ought to be working together toward the common cause. They're continually inserting division into the conversation, whether it's the banking industry, as Senator Johnson addressed this week with a Senate resolution, or whether it's in dealing with employer-employee relationships and rights, or dividing the community between the school board and the public. I just want to get that out there.
No, I appreciate that, and it's even more fundamental than that. What this does, as you might imagine, it injects government in the form of a mandated school mask mandates between children and their parents. That and what people don't understand, and this is, as a constitutional lawyer, I deal with this all the time. But constitutional rights are recognized to the individuals under the Constitution, but that is not the fundamental building block of American families. American society. It's the family. The family is a fundamental building block because that is what I would refer to as the governing body closest to home. Despite Governor Hutchinson's statement that the school board should be able to do that because that's the government body closest to the people. It's the family that should be making these decisions because that is the founding building block of American society. It's not the individual, not individual rights. So I think the underlying purpose behind these school mask mandates is to inject government between parents and their kids, and that is just egregious and horrible, and it should be recognized by the Arkansas Supreme Court, and hopefully eventually will. And that is you're right. That's part of the design. I agree with you.
All right, I've only got 2 or 3 minutes, so let me just ask you final comments on your part as far as anything you want to share with us, Greg.
Well, we're going. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. I'm fielding calls. I mean, as you might imagine, this hit the pulse, right?
This hit the fan, is what this did.
Yeah. I didn't want to go there, but yeah, we've taken calls. There's some guy in Colorado calling us. There's an attorney from Kentucky calling us. An attorney from Tennessee calls us. How'd you guys do this? I mean, this is.
You blew the lid off it.
What President Trump did in the 2020 election is he also had his finger on the pulse of the United States. This is Trump times 10. The way the abuses of the states and the federal government regarding this most fundamental of issue in the parent-child relationship. This is blowing up. I mean, I can't even tell you how many phone calls I've taken from various school districts saying, come help us, come help. And it's not, I want to sue my school district. It's please come help us. I know our constitutional rights are violated and we can't do anything on an individual basis. And so I said, call us.
That's what I want to focus on. If people can see a pathway forward and they can address this and eliminate an overreaching government into the business at the local level, then I think the peacefulness will be restored into the community. Some communities are handling it better than others, but unfortunately it takes loud voices in order to get heard. And I think that's what you've provided as a platform for these loud voices to be heard. So I want to give you.
Unfortunately, I shouldn't have to do that. I mean, I was hoping something would come out of this latest legislative session.
Okay.
And I was extremely disappointed with some of the your guys' leadership in saying we can't get to this because it's not COVID related. That's just ridiculous.
Well, there's a special session coming, so hang on. Okay, in the last couple of minutes, let me just and Greg, I'm gonna let you go because I got about a minute and a half. I want to give these guys something, but
All right, always good talking to you guys.
all right, appreciate you very much. All right, in studio today on the Kim Hammer Show, I've had Senator Dan Sullivan, Senator Blake Johnson. Senator Blake Johnson's kudos to you for running the resolution to try to be a voice for the state. But remember, if you want to express your individual concerns and voice your objection to the Biden administration, Democrat Biden, trying to reach into your personal finances, go to arkbankers.org, arkbankers.org. Check the advocacy tab. I have a hard time saying that word, but check that tab and you put out a letter that'll go straight to the top where you need to be. Dan, you got 15 seconds. Anything you want to say in closing?
Appreciate being on the show, and it's time for people to get involved. A lot of grassroots people and groups around the state. Join one and get going on it.
Blake?
Thank you for the opportunity, Kim, and I appreciate what you do here, and everyone have a good Saturday.
Very good. I appreciate it very much. All right. This has been the Kim Hammer Show. Thanks for listening here on 101.1 FM, The Answer. You get 3 continuing ed hours for listening to this show today. Free education, and we'll send you your degree. You send me an offering. Thanks. Have a great weekend.